I'm more driven to be a complete surfer and be as good of a surfer as I can be. It gets more intense as the years go on. Don't ask me. Wow, I have to say it was probably the most important thing I've ever done. My foundation became so much better. My bottom turns, trim, board speed.
Welcome back, or welcome to the Surf Mastery Podcast, the podcast that helps passionate, lifelong surfers to catch more waves, surf with more speed, style, and grace, and to gain wisdom and confidence in the water. I am your host, Michael Frampton, and you just heard a couple of quotes from today's guest, Tony Roberts, who epitomizes the ethos of this show. You may have seen photos of him on Instagram, pulling ears at 60 years old. That's right. Or Beach Grit wrote an article about him being perhaps the best performance surfer who is 60 or older, and I tend to agree. So today we are talking about how does Tony maintain such a high level of surfing performance, and why, of course. Tony has a deep and rich history in the filmmaking industry, producing a lot of surf and skate films in the 80s and 90s. Currently, Tony's focus is on surfing and trying to be, which I think he is, the best surfer at 60. Yes, Tony also shares his knowledge of not only surfing and filming, but also his local knowledge of his years of surfing particular spots at TR Surf Trips, where he organizes surf trips and guides and films, etc. Make sure you check that out. I think by the end of this, you'll be inspired to jump on a trip with him. He also has 2 YouTube channels as well. Links to those channels in the show notes, where he's sharing a lot of his knowledge and surf and skate stories, real surf stories on YouTube and real skate stories on YouTube. And of course, if you're on Instagram, make sure you follow Tony there as well, TR Surfing. Also, the music that is playing in the intro and outro of this episode is from Tony as well. He's a multi-talented man, and he shares a lot of nuggets in this conversation. So please enjoy listening to the wisdom from Tony Roberts. Describe to me and the listener your current relationship with the ocean, how it's evolved recently, and what has remained consistent.
My current relationship with the ocean is the focus of my life. So that means everything that I do is in an effort to maximize my enjoyment and performance in the ocean. What has remained consistent is that the ocean has been the focus, whether it was, as you said, in the first chapter of my life, which was, or the first half of my life, I should say, which was filmmaking and photography, which was centered around shooting, surfing, and skateboarding, which is kind of the roots of that goes back to the ocean. And then the last half of my life has been about actually the act of surfing. So all the land stuff, I still skateboard, the skateboarding, the training, the nutrition, the mental and physical flexibility is for the surfing.
So surfing and the ocean has remained consistent. When did that passion start?
When I was 8 years old, I was very fortunate that I was raised right on the sand in Capitola, California, which is on the very, very inside of the Monterey Bay. So it has all these perfect little grom spots. So it's the perfect place to learn how to surf. And then as you go up the coast north, you have point break after point break after point break that gets bigger and more exposed to swells. So it was just the ideal learning ladder to climb. I went from Capitola to Trees to Privates to Sharks Cove to the Hook to Pleasure Point to the west side of Santa Cruz, Steamer Lane, Stockton Avenue, and then up the coast, which is open ocean. So you have Waddell Creek, Scotts Creek, and then started traveling to Hawaii, Australia, Indonesia, Peru, and the whole world.
That's interesting. It's a common thread with a lot of great surfers is they were exposed to good beginner waves very early on in life. Do you think that really did shape your surfing passion? We'll call it a gentle or appropriate introduction to surfing at the right age.
100%. Not only did it form my passion, because I saw all these people that were surfing and skateboarding, and this was the 70s. So it was right in the middle of the hippie era. So it was these free love. My parents were hippies. And so I saw the passion around me and was able to really have that injected into my early persona. But more than that, I think the technique of learning at a beginner spot where ideally, if you're going to learn to surf, it's at a young age. And at any age, it should be on a slow rolling wave with a big board so you can learn the basics and the trim and the core strength before you have a shortboard and you're able to learn proper technique. So yes, growing up in a beginner friendly zone and being able to graduate up was crucial in my not only passion, but skill.
Once you'd sort of clicked onto surfing and were surrounded by better surfers and better waves, was the desire to be one of the better surfers? How did that form?
Yes, absolutely. That was really cultivated skateboarding because at Skate Park SoCal, which was close to my house, I was able to really quantify my progression. Whereas surfing, that's kind of hard to do. But a lot of the best skaters at Skate Park SoCal were, of course, great surfers. In particular, Kevin Reed, the guy who invented the aerial surfing, was a pro surfer, pro skateboarder, and he mentored me. So as a young kid, I was able to look at this amazing surfer, skateboarder, and really quantify my progression. So I really wanted to be progressing and I wanted to be the best guy for my age. And I wanted to win contests, surfing and skateboarding. And I wanted to be able to surf the waves that I saw in the magazine. So that desire for progression was planted very early.
Was a big part of that a desire to be able to surf faster and bigger waves?
Absolutely. We'd go to the surf movies and it was all about Jerry Lopez, Reno Avalera, getting goosebumps right now. The big movie, with the soundtrack and the dramatic narration, it just got into your bones, it got into your blood. And I saw those waves and I wanted to surf them so bad. But also in the 70s, of course, it was the busting down the door era. And my friends were just all about BK, James Jones, Rory Russell. But in reality, for me, it was all about Rabbit, PT, MP. I was really attracted to Australia. And as a very young kid, I knew that when I got the chance, I was going to surf Kira, Burley Heads, and that was really my dream. So my entire youth surfing was working towards that.
More performance surfing rather than big wave surfing. Back then, particularly, did you approach surfing as a sport or an art?
As a sport, which didn't really exist yet. It was still very much so the flow and the hippie aspect of surfing. That's what was in the magazines.
Mm.
And a surf photo in the 70s was the wave, and a surfer was a detail. But skateboarding was different. There was a lot of fisheye, close photos in the skateboard magazines where the action was the entire photo and the bowl or the ramp was a mere detail in the background. And I was so influenced on the skateboarding end of things because I was 50-50 my whole life. And so I wanted to perform. I wanted those repetitions. And so much so that surfing as a youth, if I didn't get a lot of waves, I would come in unsatisfied and go skate to be able to fulfill that desire to be complete. And so I think that it was very much a sport for me personally in the age of it being an art.
Interesting. And has that changed? Do you see it as more of an art now?
No, not at all. It hasn't changed. What has changed is that I love to ride traditional longboards. I love to ride single fins. I love to do a style of surfing that's very artistic, but it's in a process of becoming a more complete surfer. And I feel that those styles of surfing are incredibly technical in a different way. But having done airs surfing my entire life, starting when I was preteen, and getting to a stage to where in my 40s wanting to learn traditional longboarding for the first time, I'm more driven to be a complete surfer and be as good of a surfer as I can be. It gets more intense as the years go on.
Interesting. How did you mentioned when you started longboarding in your 40s? How did that change or influence your shortboarding?
Wow, I have to say it was probably the most important thing I've ever done, as my foundation became so much better. My bottom turns, trim, board speed. And I was very fortunate in that I was living in Costa Rica at the time. And a friend of mine, Chris Klopf, started bringing down the best traditional longboarders in the world who were young guys, Alex Nost, Jared Mell, Tyler Warren. And when I saw those guys surf, I had a revelation and said, wow, I really want to learn to do this. And so I got to hang out with these guys, buy boards from them, learn to longboard, surfing with them, and actively ask them, what am I doing wrong? How can I improve? And so they very transparently told me what I was doing wrong, what I was doing good. And that clinic of foundational surfing helped my shortboarding by leaps and bounds.
Wow, yeah, I agree. I've interviewed Bud Freitas probably 6 or 7 years ago, and that was one of his tips: to get a big old log and learn how to longboard. Best thing you can do for your shortboarding. I took his advice, and yeah, it forces you to read the wave differently. It slows you down. You got to predict your lines differently. You got to be slower and more accurate with your movements. Lots of stuff, footwork, lots of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. What aspects of longboarding do you think contributed to what you just mentioned? Can you break it down a little bit for us?
Absolutely. First and foremost, it is that when the waves aren't good for shortboarding, you're out there using a part of your brain that is very ambitious in trying to perform, not just enjoying nature and cruising and going through the motions. No, really getting intense and trying to do something amazing. And that is a day that if you're trying to shortboard, you're pretty much kidding yourself. And so a day that's maximum longboard, traditional longboarding, is minimum at best shortboarding. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, the core strength required to properly trim and turn a longboard is the only way to do it properly. If you're doing it with your ankles or you're using your arms or any of that stuff, you're completely blowing it. It's a very core internal technique that not only moves the board, but looks good. And so you want to be bending with a straight back. You don't want to be hunching over and all of that traditional longboarding technique when you get on a shortboard. And I ride boards that are all different sizes, including little boards that are basically like a stand-up bodyboard. And so when you're getting on these tiny little boards that just want to swirl around, but you have that core strength technique, all of a sudden you're like hugging the wave and carving these little boards in a way that is really proper technique. And then when you get on your normal shortboard, you're able to really draw out your turns and hold your turns, because it's, in my opinion, it's a method that you have to ride all different sizes of boards to come to. And I think there's a few surfers in the world, they just naturally kind of have that technique, you know, like Bud Friedis is one. He was born with an amazing style. Joel Parkinson, you know, you've got these guys that no matter what they do on a surfboard, it looks amazing. But I think for a normal surfer to be able to cultivate that full rail core strength, never a double hitch in a bottom turn, never a flapping of the upper body, just everything you do is proper, that riding all boards is going to enable you to do that on your shortboard.
Yeah, no, I love that. They say the same thing is true in golf, right? You don't change your swing, you change your club. Same rule applies, I
100%.
reckon.
And when I learned golf, I got lessons from a PGA pro. I was so focused on learning all the etiquette, because golf is a gentleman's sport and you don't walk behind someone in their backswing or talk or step on someone's line. And the way that people approach surfing with so much disrespect and disregard for proper etiquette, which infuriates us lifelong surfers. When I approached the sport of golf, I was very, very adamant about learning it the proper way and not skipping clubs and not using woods until I could hit the irons, and really approaching it in the most respectful way as possible, using the proper shoes, not going out there in a t-shirt and sandals, but really respecting the sanctity of this incredible sport.
Yeah, I love that. And you're right. Nowadays, people certainly do not approach surfing anywhere near with that amount of thought. On that note, if there are any beginners listening at the moment, what advice would you have to them in that regards?
Yes, well, I think that if you approach surfing with a lot of respect, then that would be, before even talking about the social aspect, is self-respect. And that is riding a beginner board in beginner waves until you have that board and those waves mastered. And do not try to graduate and skip steps on the ladder, because that's not being respectful to yourself. And to the expert surfers in the water, they can see that a mile away. That's not being respectful to them. So you have no reason using anything but a 10-foot soft top and 1 foot slow rolling waves until you have that mastered. And then when you have that mastered, you go to the next step, then the next step, then the next step. And you shouldn't be riding a shortboard in advanced waves for years.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's a great way to think of it, actually, in terms of self-respect, because that short process you just described is the best way to learn surfing, because surfing is a long-term sport. It truly is. There's no there's no shortcuts in surfing. It's just one of those things. It's so dynamic, so complex, beyond your ability to realize when you're young. And it's every surf is like a compound. It's like compound interest, isn't it? It just takes so long to gather up. It's not like tennis where you can go and smash a bunch of balls in the same place with the same ball machine or the same coach and get pretty good in 6 months. That's not surfing. That's great advice. Yeah, it is a certain level of self-respect, because if you're going out there and you're getting frustrated because people are dropping in on you or treating you like shit, well, it's probably because you've skipped some of those steps, and they're just reflecting back to you your own attitude, really.
100%. And furthermore, if you don't do that, you will always surf like a kook. If you learn on a shortboard, you will always surf like a kook. Every single person out there who just jumps on a shortboard and didn't go through the learning process, they didn't learn how to turn the board with core strength, and they start turning it with their ankles and compensating with their upper body. And that's why a lot of in third world countries, nobody has a good style, because nobody knows this and they all learn on shortboards. So if you want to have a good style, it helps if you're doing this when you're a little kid and you're learning on a longer board. But if you're an adult and you're learning on a shortboard, you will definitely be a kook your entire life.
Yeah, no, I love that. Makes me think of Julian Wilson, someone who has not only great style, but picture perfect technique. He has a longboarding background.
Perfect example.
Yeah. I want to go back to we segued a little bit, but I want to go back to the art versus sport subject. I'm fascinated in your answer. I kind of expected you to say art, because I would argue that even when you treat surfing like a sport, i.e. a WSL competition, the surfers that win those competitions, when they're actually surfing the wave, I feel like their surfing is very artistic, and they're of course, you've got tactics and technique to get the right waves and all that sporting stuff. But once they're actually surfing the wave, they're approaching it as an art form.
Perhaps, but in my opinion, I see art in the aspect that you're talking about, in the way that an amazing NBA player dribbles up the court, or in the way that a street league skateboarder puts together their run. But in my opinion, it's just artistic sport. The sport is the act of riding the wave. And if you're sitting out there and you're just enjoying nature and you're just having a spiritual moment, that's artistic. But I don't look at surfing like that. And it's because of my skateboarding background. I want the opportunity to try something. And in between sets, I might take in the view and acknowledge the fact that it's a magical moment in nature. But in reality, I'm saying mantras to myself before the next wave comes, so that I will perform as well as I can in that short given opportunity that I get, that's between 20 and 90 seconds, depending on the spot you're surfing. And I also have somebody filming me. I want to get a good clip. And so some of my mantras, for example, are, I'm sitting there between sets waiting for the wave to come, and I'll say to myself, crisp takeoff, And I'll say it over and over to myself in my mind, just so that I don't get ahead of myself. I'm not thinking like, oh, I want to do an air on this wave or I want to combo up. No, no, no. Because if I can get a crisp takeoff, which is hard enough, after 52 years of surfing, I still sometimes don't get a crisp takeoff and I blow the entire wave. But if I do get a crisp takeoff, almost always magic unfolds down the wave because we have all the instinct, we have all the ability. It's logged into our mind. We have all the practice, but we get in our own way with having too much crap in our mind when we're paddling into the waves. So if I can get a crisp takeoff, chances are I'm going to do magic on the wave. And another mantra that I use is simply, and this is usually after I kick out from a wave and I'm paddling back out and I'm playing back that wave in my mind, what I did good, what I did bad. And maybe I did something funky like a spray check or something, where if you do a spray check, your board stops because the nose of your board is going to follow your head, right? And if your head is looking where you want the board to go and your head's following through and holding the carve all the way to the bottom of the wave, you're going to do this amazing carve. But sometimes we do this stupid little thing where we like look at our spray and the board just stops. And you fucked up the whole wave. And so paddling back out, sometimes I'll acknowledge that I did that. And then my mantra, no matter what, between the next sets is going to be form. I'm just going to say to myself over and over, form, form. Sometimes I'll compound it with crisp takeoff, form. And that's all I'm thinking. And then I get into that wave and I'm thinking form. And I know that I'm going to have my head going the right direction. You know, I don't know if you saw that video that Gur did with Aki recently, where Gur had all these backside snaps of Aki, like ready to show him. And he said, Aki, he goes, you know why your backside snap is the best of all time? And Aki's like, no, man, I never really thought about it. And he said, it's where your eyes are. He goes, look at this snap. And it's that classic Billabong J-Bay ad where he's just like all rail and just perfect form. And he goes, look at your head. He goes, you're looking down the line where you want the board to go. So you're completing your snap, but you're already looking at the next section. So that's why you're able to hold the rail, come out into a full bottom turn, keep it on rail, and into the next snap. That whole process was on rail. There was no hitch. There was nothing, because Aki's eyes are always on the prize. So I'll say mantras to myself between waves, and that is really how I keep the performance at its peak. And so that's why on all aspects for me, it's always a sport, never an art.
Okay, what about music? Do you see any similarities between surfing and music?
I see music almost like a tool for the sport. And I'm a musician and I love to play music, and I'm always trying to get better at music also. I mean, I enjoy the artistic aspect, but it's a process. You know, I'm trying to improve. And it is not a sport, obviously. It is an art, music. However, it's a performance art. And I think that in sports, if it's a performance art, it's a sport. A creative sport, an artistic sport, a beautiful sport, but a sport nonetheless.
So dancing?
Dancing, and I also absolutely love to dance. I'm always trying to get better. I'm always trying to learn new dances. I want, like, for example, I've lived in Latin America more than half of my life, and certain dances like cumbia and merengue, they're really easy. You can get really good if you have natural rhythm. Salsa's incredibly technical. It's incredibly difficult. And I've got 30 plus years, 40 plus years learning to dance salsa. and have taken lessons. And salsa is borderline a sport. And there's salsa dance competitions. And I often use the comparison of surfing and dancing salsa because, for example, right now, the big controversy is, should Kelly Slater get the wild card at Trestles? And people are saying, oh, he's older and he doesn't have the board speed he used to have. And I have to remind people that surfing as a sport is a lot closer to a salsa dance contest than it is an MMA fight. So board speed and physical strength in an MMA fight is everything. But in a salsa dance contest, experience and transitions are going to win the contest. And it's very rare that some young couple is going to be able to step up and take out what is experience. So I feel like dancing is an art, but there are contests and it is judged and there are winners. But just like surfing, you're going to have one judge who thinks couple B is better than couple A. And that has to do with their background and their biases and maybe even what country they're from. So there's a lot of similarities in salsa dance contests and the WSL.
I think surfing almost bridges the gap between sport and art. I like to think of it as an art often because when I think of sport, I think of competitive sports. But when I think of art, I think of music and being in rhythm and having good timing and technique. So for me personally, at this stage of my life, having good rhythm, timing and technique and just keeping things smooth and appropriate for the wave and the board, I give it more of an art label rather than in my 20s, I was out there, I wanted to, three to the beach, do the biggest turn I can, sort of pretend I was being judged, I think. So that's where the definition, but I agree. I think surfing is both.
Yeah, absolutely. Like everything that you described that makes it an art for you, I want that in my ride and on that video clip and in my next video. It's not just to do it for the expression, artistic expression. No, it's a concrete thing that I'm trying to accomplish. But surfing, as you said, bridges the gap because for it to look good, it has to look free flowing and not mechanical and artistic, as it were.
I think if I was, as surfers, if we were to snap our fingers and all of a sudden we're standing on our surfboards, feet in the right part of the board, surfboard in the right part of the wave, from that moment on, surfing's actually pretty simple and easy, and that the hardest part of surfing is what happens in between when the surfboard is under your arms and under your feet. How?
If you have the ability, absolutely.
Yes, yeah. For experienced surfers, or anyone really. I mean, the surfer, the ratio is what, 1 minute of surfing to every hour, if you're lucky, in the water. So what we do in between when the surfboard is under our arms and under our feet, what advice would you have to people to manage that part of surfing?
Oh man, that's everything. Because surfing are these fleeting moments. And anything in the world that you do in an effort to improve your surfing is going to pay off huge. And that goes from going to the gym, improving your diet, spiritual development, whatever religious faith you might be, anything that you do off of the board that is consciously to improve your surfing is going to pay off huge. And especially in training. And I've heard people say that the best training for surfing is surfing. Bullshit. Surfing will destroy your shoulders. It will destroy your ears. It will destroy all these different parts of your body that the human body wasn't made for this out of balance activity that will destroy you. So yoga is the complete mind, body, strength, flexibility, discipline, workout that was invented thousands of years ago and perfected thousands of years ago. And if you adapt that to surfing, it's the best thing you could possibly do for your surfing tomorrow and for your surfing longevity. And that will compensate and balance out your entire body so that your shoulders and these other parts of your body that are getting this unbalanced workout, it puts it all back in balance.
Those moments when you are standing on a surfboard and dancing with the ocean, do they inspire you and drive you to practice yoga and eat healthy and get to bed on time, etc.?
100%. Everything. It influences every single decision I make in my life and has since I was a young child. When I was a young child, I said, how am I going to be able to surf as good as I can my entire life? And that's been my lifelong mission. And I stopped eating animal products as a child, for example, and started studying Buddhism and yoga as a child. And that has been 100% for surfing. And going through life and relationships, if you're going to be a good husband or a boyfriend, you have to sacrifice surf time. And for me, I figured out pretty long ago that that doesn't work with my lifestyle and my goals. I'm not going to sacrifice and I'm not going to compromise my surfing for a woman, period. So that means that my relationships only go to a point to where it's not going to interfere with my surfing. And the same goes with my decisions with work, my decisions with lifestyle, my decisions with diet, my decisions with exercise. And the reason why you don't see surfers, I don't see surfers my age doing themselves justice because they've compromised for work, for relationships, and that's fine. That's their priority. But they're not at their full level because of it. None of them. And if you really want to be at your full level, then you need to be 100% committed. There's no half-assing it. And if you put 20% of that effort into your relationship, or you're still drinking and you're still eating hamburgers and smoking cigars and all that kind of stuff, you're not going to be at your peak level, which is fine. That's your personal choice. But if you are going to be at your peak level, it takes 100% commitment.
I mentioned the word compound interest. It's interesting to see you improve as you age, despite what society tells us should happen as we age. And that your consistency and dedication and commitment to surfing has just seen your relationship to surfing and with the ocean, just the depth of it increases. And you're still obviously inspired by it greatly. And is it your most successful long-term relationship? surfing?
Without a doubt. I mean, also with my daughter, who's 19 years old, which hasn't been as long as my relationship with surfing, but is, I feel like it's 100 points also. And I was very fortunate in that her mother broke up with me when she was pregnant and was a third world country girl in the middle of nowhere. And I said, well, if you're not going to be with me, then I'm going to take the kid, but you're still going to be the mother. We're going to drop in and visit you once in a while, but I'm taking the kid. And she signed off on it. So I raised my daughter myself, and my concept when she was an infant was, okay, I'm going to try to continue living my ideal lifestyle and raise her. And once it's not working out, then I'll compromise for my daughter. But as it turned out, I never had to compromise. And going on my vagabond, following swells, being in different countries at my favorite surf spots during the peak time of the year, and focusing everything around that worked out amazing. And my daughter had this incredible international, universal education, and now is an unbelievably inspirational adult that is now teaching me. So yes, I think that surfing has been my longest relationship, and it gets stronger and stronger with age because I learn as the years go on how to eliminate the other things in my life that interfere with it. And you mentioned society. Like, this does not work with society at all. And I listen to my friends and other people talk about their relationships and what they think is normal. And it's not conducive to a lifestyle where you're committed to surfing. If you're in cold water, or you're dealing with traffic, or you're surfing waves that you don't want to surf, that are crowded, or not surfing because you're at work or any of those things, if surfing was your number one priority at one stage of the game, you wouldn't have sacrificed, and you would have made surfing work. And to do that to the fullest, you want to be in the tropics. You want to be at a good wave that you can continually progress. And if you sacrifice that for work, again, good on you. That's your prerogative. You can live however you want, but you didn't do yourself justice in the surfing end of things. And that's what society dictates. And I really don't see I've never met anybody who, like myself, is going to go 100% committed to surfing performance in every aspect of your life, in all of your relationships. And guess what? People are going to respect you more. Women are going to want you more when they can't get you. And your child is going to have a much more fulfilling education. When you are homeschooling her, you're teaching her on the road and linking her up with professional professors, getting her specialized education. And it goes so many miles beyond what society has dictated for us. And as a surfer, if your first priority is surfing and your own surfing performance, and that is your priority, that leads itself to the best diet, the best religion, the best ethics, the best morals, the best person that you can be, contributing to this entire planet, because that's what surfing dictates.
I love that. I think it's also, to add to that, your daughter's growing up with a parent who is modeling what can happen when you do narrow things down and don't try and do everything and focus on something, how good you can get and how you can develop a relationship with something like surfing over time. And I think that's missing in a lot of adults.
100%. And it goes back to the word you said, society, and people that I can't believe it. I can't believe that they just fall for it. All my friends, we were all the same. When we were 13, 14, 15, we all wanted to be in the tropics. Those things that we drew on our notepad, the perfect point break with the hammock, with the dark-skinned girls in bikinis running around, and the cement ramp on the beach, like the doodles. That's life, man. That's freaking life.
Yeah, there'll be people listening who are thinking, oh my God, how dare you not prioritize your daughter's education, and yet their teenage child is in their bedroom on their smartphone while they're having a glass of wine and watching Netflix.
Yeah, and my daughter's education, she's 19 years old, and now she's already incredibly successful. Yeah, I mean, I wish I earned the money that she earns. And it's incredible.
Very cool.
As you said, it was she saw an example of somebody who had a focused goal, but that focused goal, there's so many aspects that are integral to go into that. Diet, nutrition, lack of stress, spiritual strength, mental and physical flexibility, training, regimen. That's all she's ever known. And now she's taking it to the way next level.
Yeah, no, I like that. Because we're talking about things that we do anyway. Everyone eats. Everyone goes to bed at a certain time. It's just, are you eating for mouth pleasure or are you eating to fuel a better surfing journey?
That's it, bro. You nailed it.
I want to go back to the time between when the surfboard is under your arm and under your feet. When you're sitting out the back, paddling around, waiting for waves, how do you manage your focus and everything above eye level, your head? How do you manage that?
Yeah, I try to stay away from people. I don't look at people rides unless it's somebody that is on a high level, because if I see somebody kook it can get into my subconscious, because the flow I have in my mind is very, very next level. It's built on mindfulness meditation practice. It's built on Shaolin, Tai Chi techniques. So much has gone into that mindset between waves that I can't let any of this peripheral stuff interfere with that. And it's also very important to be cordial and say hi to people, but maintain focus, as you said. That's the key word right there. And how I do it is concentrating on my breath, returning to the present moment, using mantras, and really visualizing what I'm going to do on the wave in the aspect of keeping an open mind when I drop in and reading the wave and giving the wave what the wave calls for. Like getting in, crisp takeoff, and then looking down the line and not having anything in my mind and reacting to those changes of the waves. I got to work a lot with Kelly Slater and filmed him all over the world. And he's the best I've ever seen at reading waves. It's incredible how he can react to what the wave is going to do. And sometimes he'll be out there the whole session and doesn't do any airs, and people are like, oh, look at him, he can't do airs anymore, blah, 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 blah. And then the best ramp of the day comes in, and he does the craziest air that anyone's done in months. And it was the only one he tried, because he's only going to do an air if it's a perfect ramp. So he's a great example in having an open mind when you drop in. I don't think he ever thinks, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that when he's paddling into the wave.
Yeah, I mean, reading the wave is the hardest part of surfing, but all great surfers do it well. That's something that no matter what style of surfing you want it or you do, reading the wave is the foundation of it, right? And that actually starts before you stand up too, right? You got to choose the right wave. You got to sit in the right spot. You got to paddle in at the right angle. You got to time your takeoff. And when you say crisp takeoff, what do you mean by crisp?
A good pop-up. Good pop-up, from the hands straight to the feet in a millisecond. Crisp, And sometimes that means doing a plank, like hands on the rails, feet on the deck, and letting the wave build. Going down the first sixth of the wave in plank position, and then right at the right moment, snapping to your feet. It doesn't always mean like getting in early and getting up quick. No, crisp means that pop-up, it's perfect. There's no like stumbling to the feet. There's no like knee grazing the deck as you're standing up. It's just those hands to the feet in like a millisecond.
But timing's everything.
The timing, as you said.
Yeah, because there's a difference between quick and fast. Yeah, you want to time it well. So would you say that as you're paddling into, and maybe you're in a plank and you're waiting for the right moment, that whole time you're already surfing the wave? Like surfing starts before you stand up?
Well, that depends on your definition of surfing.
In terms of you're not trying to get the perfect pop-up in exactly the right spot per se, because maybe you misread the wave a little bit, so you're remaining adaptable and just changing the timing of your pop-up. Maybe you hold back. You're always sort of reading the wave. Once it's sort of got you and you're almost in it, you're already kind of setting your line. You're surfing the wave, at least visually, before you even pop up. So a pop-up is still a maneuver in surfing. So people often say the bottom turn is the first maneuver. My argument would be it's actually the pop-up's the first.
I agree with you.
So crisp takeoff. I like that. Tell us about your surf trips.
I do a surf trip package where people can come surf and shoot with me. Usually they don't get to surf with me very much because I'm shooting the whole time and have a second photographer, filmer shooting as well. But I have a website, trsurftrips.com, where I offer trips to the best waves at the best time of the year that are my favorite spots in the region of Central America and the Caribbean. And after being down here for 40 plus years full time, I've got completely dialed where is good, when it's good, and I know all the locals everywhere, and I know the best places to stay. So depending on the size of the group, the surfers' interest, their level, I make these trips for them that include all transport, accommodation, and I film all of their waves. We analyze their waves. If they want coaching, I give them coaching. And at the end of the trip, I make a trip movie edit for them as a souvenir, which includes not only their waves, but scenics and on the road experiences And this has been a way for me to use a lifetime of filmmaking, professional photography as senior staff photographer for Surfing Magazine, official photographer of the Quicksilver Crossing. I was on the Indies Trader for 3 years on the boat, filming all the best surfers in the world. And that project was, they wanted the culture and the surfing photography and cinematography, which was why I was the perfect fit for that project, because I've been in these cultures, immersed, bilingual for so many decades, that I was able to capture all that for their project. And so now I'm able to utilize all that experience and give that experience to any surfer on any level and their friends or family. And it's incredibly gratifying for me, because if I get Kelly Slater's best video clip of the year, he doesn't really care. Quicksilver doesn't really care. They're like, oh, great, good job. They expect it. But if I get the average surfer's best clip of his life, the look on his face, and it's just so gratifying for me. And it's the true essence of being able to give back after a lifetime of being blessed with this incredible lifestyle of traveling the entire planet at all the best waves in the world with all the best surfers, and to now continue to utilize that skill set for everyday surfers is incredible.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. And gosh, just the experience of knowing when and where to surf from home, whatever home base you've chosen, that's just invaluable for any surf trip I've ever been on. The better and more experienced the surf guiding, where we're going today, what time we're surfing due to the tides and the swell. I mean, that makes or breaks a trip, really. And then plus, it's all on film, and you can get coaching if you want. I mean, that sounds amazing. And where people that want to find out more and book, where do they go?
trsurftrips.com. So it's my initials, Tony.
Okay, great. I'll make sure there's links to that in the show notes. And you also have a YouTube channel. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I have 2 YouTube channels, Real Surf Stories and Real Skate Stories. And these are a way to cement legacies of the greats of our sports, surfing and skateboarding, that gives an opportunity to do a deep dive into their surfing life and what has made them great, and using what they've accomplished to inspire us, because each surfer has led these incredible lives that have inspired us in so many ways. And sometimes you'll hear the person's name, but you don't really know much about that person. And so I'm always looking for those surfers and those stories that really give you a better perspective of them. And also, as I said, to celebrate their legacy so they don't slide through the cracks. Like one example is, I'd heard about this guy, Butch Van Aertsdalen. And I even knew that he was known as Mr. Pipeline. But I realized I didn't know much about this guy. So I started doing some research, and holy crap, what an incredible person and story and character. And I mean, for anyone who ever knew that guy, he was the most larger than life figure they'd ever met and ever knew. Yet here we are, decades later, and barely even know who the guy is. So to be able to do a story on that guy, and then having his family reach out to me and so graciously say, wow, thank you so much. Like, this is so important to us that people know Butch's story. And I just did one with a PT where I was able to sit down with him and rap out for like 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
And the amount of influence and impact that he's had in so many different aspects of surfing, people don't realize that. They know PT for one thing or another, but if you put the entire package together, PT's, in my opinion, the most influential impact surfer in the history of our sport. Yeah, the Duke is more impactful in getting it started. Kelly Slater's more impactful in competition. You have these other people that are more impactful in certain categories, but the amount of categories and the amount of impact that PT had in all those categories. So my YouTube channel celebrates all these incredible stories and, again, gives me an opportunity to utilize a lifetime of filmmaking, because that has been my career my entire life. I was director of video at O'Neill. I made the O'Neill Ozone in 1988. In my filmmaking career, I was the first person to use hip hop and rap music in skate videos and surf videos. I invented the follow footage angle in street skateboarding. I invented the skate style water shot angle in surfing. So my entire career has been trying to do something that's never been done before, doing it, and moving on to the next thing. And now I'm able to utilize all that in my own channel, which is like me having my own movie theater, my own TV station. I've been a musician my whole life, a DJ. I make beats, I make music, I rap, I sing. Now it's like I have my own radio station. I absolutely love the technology more than anything, you know, and it's far reaching in every direction worldwide. So it's incredibly inspiring and gratifying.
Wow. Yeah. Gosh. Okay, listener. Well, if you're inspired to go on a surf trip with Tony and have some of this rub off and surf some great waves, get some great footage, then you can go to TR Surf Trips, and there will be a link to that in the show notes. And if you want to learn and explore Tony's YouTube channels, there'll be links to those in the show notes as well. Those who want to learn more about Tony's backstory and history, which he just touched on a few points there, I will put a link to the interview that David Lee Scales did with you back in 2014 in the show notes as well. Tony Roberts, thank you so much for your time. You are an inspiration, especially to us older surfers, and what's possible in surfing longevity and performance. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Michael. Absolute pleasure.
Don't ask me what you know is true. Don't have to tell you I love your precious heart. I was standing, you were there. Two worlds collided, and they could never tear us apart. We could live for 1,000 years, but if I hurt you, I'll make wine from your tears. I told you that we could fly, 'cause we all have wings, but some of us don't know why. I was standing, You